Hello and welcome to the final series in our grief and loss class. This will be the last meditation that I will record for this book study, The Smell of Rain on Dust. I have been really impressed with everyone who has participated in how they have been willing to share, been willing to be vulnerable, their commitment to the class itself and to honoring the contributions of others in the class. This week will be our final time together, so I invite you, if you'd like, to attend either Sunday in person or online via Zoom. And this week is going to be a bit of a wrap-up session. It will also talk about a couple of lingering questions. So I'm going to first summarize a chapter from the book, and then we'll talk about the wrap-up. So the final chapter from this book that I want to talk about is called Money Eats the World. Martin tells a story about a Native American story about how a small shell named money ends up in a position of power against this great god of thunder. Thunder has a child named Lightning, and he loses Lightning. Lightning dies, and so he goes around destroying things, questioning all the other elements. Where have they seen his son? And the shell money knows what happened to his son, and he tries to pipe up, he tries to say something, and Thunder just can't hear this tiny shell, and eventually the tiny shell eats and consumes parts of the world and keeps doing so until Thunder quiets itself long enough to hear what money has to say. And the metaphor is that money, though sometimes very small, can engulf our entire lives. And so what relationship does that have to grief? Well, this is what Martin has to say. He says, "No people, culture, science, or invention is so formidable that it can guarantee the safety, security, and predictability for its own furtherance and creations." So what he's saying there is that nothing we make, no one in our culture is so strong that it can guarantee our safety and security and be able to predict what will come. He says for nature, though, for nature, who has all the time in the world on her side, if she is countered instead of courted, if she's like opposed instead of wooed, she will always contain something friendly, invisible, unknown, and dangerous that can, at her whim, utterly alter whatever we humans think this and loving nature for it. So what Martin's trying to say there is that we have these inventions, these things that we create, aspects of our lives that are man-made or person-made, that we rely on for security, for predictability, for certainty. What Martin's saying is that existing out there is nature that will, depending on how we treat it, always, always, always destroy that which we think is certain, that which we put all of our eggs in, so to speak. Nature can upend that at any time, and typically does. Martin goes on to say, in the conclusion of this chapter, he says, wealth, that is money, is deferred grief piled up. Wealth's money, then, must be spent on restoring life to that which the original non-listening has ravaged, without it being understood as a loan, but a substantial offering into an unpayable debt, whose only interest gain would be the grief remembered of the world we lost by our collective refusal to stop and listen to it. That is a lot in that paragraph. What I get from that paragraph is that when we lose something, even though it might not be money that we lose, it costs us something. That loss costs us both mentally, emotionally, and financially, and we try to buy things, buy security to fill what we have lost. Typically in loss, sometimes you see people filling themselves with money or food or power because they're trying to fill that emptiness or that void. And what Martin is saying is that nature will not allow it. Eventually, nature will take what is theirs, that we are taking from it. He says, we can't bring back what we loved from the dead, or the past world that has been consumed. But at least we can stop ravaging and listen to the small and to the world's grief. By listening, maybe a world that no longer consumes itself through business will sprout into view. Maybe then we can have our world back. So what Martin is saying in that chapter, or in that paragraph to me, is that if we can stop and listen to that which is quiet, to that which is small, to the grief of others, then we will be able to get our world back that is lost. And so that ties in with our final week session, where we're talking about how does our grief that we have for things and for people in our lives, how does that correlate to the grief we experience from the loss of our leader, Jesus Christ? Typically, Lent is intended to be a season in which we are grieving, or we are anticipating, rather, the loss of Jesus. We spend these 40-odd days journeying to Christ's death, but in reality, we journey towards Christ's resurrection. Typically in Christian circles, we gloss over the messy emotions of Christ's death. Some churches celebrate Maundy Thursday, where they celebrate the supper that Jesus had before he was betrayed. Even in that moment, there is some joy in remembrance. Very few churches now have Good Friday services where we actually get to experience the crucifixion, get to live with and sit with the death of Jesus. And it's because we want to gloss over these emotions that we immediately jump from Palm Sunday, maybe stop in on Maundy Thursday, we skip over Good Friday and Holy Saturday, and then on Sunday we celebrate Christ's resurrection. Because we cannot stomach the thought of Christ's death being permanent. What does that mean for you? What would it be like for you to sit in Holy Saturday or in Good Friday not knowing that Christ will rise again? If you think about it in the place of the disciples that are at Jesus' feet at the bottom of the cross as they look up and see their Messiah crucified, they have no certainty that Christ will come back in a few days. They have no promise of a tomb with the stone rolled away. Only we have that. So what would it be like to put us in the place of not knowing about the resurrection, and instead sit at Christ's body like we do with all of our loved ones who die? Sitting in that sorrow and that grief for the loss of Jesus. Because I think that will better inform the joy of the resurrection on Sunday, is to have sat with the sadness and the anger and the unknowing and the curiosity and the hurt of his death. Will make us have a greater appreciation for the promise that he has of new life. So this week, I'm going to ask you to contemplate what that would be like for you. How do you grieve Christ's loss, or how would you grieve Christ's loss? And put some words to those emotions and those feelings. And then also I want us to spend some time on Sunday talking about what we've gotten from this class, the things that we have learned and the connections that we have made for ourselves and to others. And I think that will fill our time beautifully. I hope that you have gotten something out of these meditations, whether you've joined us for the discussion group or not. And if you would ever like to talk more about either this book or more about grief and loss, you are happy to contact myself or our senior pastor, Lori Bievenauer, if you are going through some grief and loss that you'd like to process out loud. Again, I want to thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you in person or online in the future. Thanks.